Welcome everybody to the EdTech Center. We're recording this session so that people who couldn't come today might get a chance to view it later. So Rob is here helping. My name is Nick Mattos. I'm instructional designer for the Leadership Studies program and part of the EdTech team here. And
I'm Jessie Turner. I'm visiting in collegiate seminar in Jan term.
And so we were asked to put together a workshop on ways to use rubrics, especially within Moodle for the seminar program, which has a number of resources already available, including a Moodle site that has some resources that have already, some rubrics that have already been shared there, as well as meetings like this. So I think seminar faculty get together frequently to talk about things like rubrics and pedagogy. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on it.
The last place that I was at used Canvas, and it took me a while of teaching online to figure out that rubrics via an online learning management system really do facilitate grading. And so when I started here this semester, I played around with it with these guys and thought it might be helpful for other folks.
And I co-presented a workshop about 6 months ago, I think, with the School of Ed, Cliff Lee, just kind of on basic rubric, why use rubrics, and a few of these ways to implement rubrics within Moodle, as well as with Google Forms. So that's where my background is coming in the instructional technology side. So for the agenda today, we just wanted to go around to and get your names and some of your thoughts on the ways you use rubrics or challenges that you've experienced using them. And then we'll just talk briefly a little bit about rubrics, a topic hopefully most of us are somewhat familiar with. And then we have some examples that we're going to give of ways to use rubrics within Moodle for participation, for assignments, for like writing assignments, and an alternate way to use the assignments tool to do participation grading. And then throughout those, we'll share benefits and challenges, and then feel free to ask us any questions, or if you want to wait some of them to the end, we'll also then have you enrolled in a Moodle course that you can just practice on some of these things. All right. So if we want to maybe start over here with just a brief introduction, who you are, department, and something, either a way you've used rubrics or a question that you had today about rubrics.
I'm Jessie. I'm the Director of Educational Technology, actually, so this team is part of my folks here. I have actually created rubrics on Canvas and used rubrics for peer assessment. So I used to co-facilitate a MOOC course with 2 other faculty members on ePortfolio. And so the rubrics is really important because it's sort of a standard for other peers to assess peers so that the faculty or instructor doesn't have to be too visible in such a large class course. I think one of the questions I have is how could we be very specific with rubrics at the same time be very general as well so that it can incorporate sort of like more of a fluid course. So that's one of my questions, so that it can be in a broader context applicable. That's it.
Hi, I'm Megan Mustaine. I'm the new Dean of the Core, and I get to teach seminar for the first time this coming spring. I'm excited about that. I've used rubrics quite a bit, mostly for like institutional and learning outcomes assessment purposes, so abstracted from the classroom. I have struggled with how to use them in classroom, and I think seminar is probably a good example of why I've struggled, because I tend to be, or I tend to appreciate a very off-the-cuff style of student engagement. So I want to keep the liveliness and the dynamic nature, and I've struggled with how to fit rubrics into that when they aren't generally dynamic things. In fact, that is a problem for a good rubric. So I'm looking forward to learning more about what other ways than my limited imagination has been able to come up with to use these things.
I'm Anna Corwin. I am in anthropology. I will also be teaching seminar for the first time in the spring, and I'm looking forward to it. I did use a participation rubric in last spring in anthro course, upper div anthro course, that I used a participation rubric that I think was similar to what people do in seminar. It's certainly what Jose Feito does in his psych courses, and I loved the rubric, but I couldn't get it. I couldn't get it in Moodle in a way that was easy for me to use, and so I wasted a lot of time emailing individual students every time we met. And so I would love today to get a little bit better at kind of getting things into the Moodle platform.
Hi, I'm Andrew Connor. I'm in the math department. I'm also looking forward to teaching seminar for the first time. I have very limited experience with rubrics, and never with a participation rubric. Solely in a couple examples for class assignments, term papers in Math 10. But for most of our classwork and courses, that's not something I use very much. So I kind of don't know what I don't know, and just here to learn.
I'm Michael Nathanson. I'm in the math department as well, and I'm teaching seminar in the spring for the first time in a while. Not for the first time in a while. And like Megan, I've used, the rubrics have been outside the classroom, not student focused. The idea of a rubric written in the language that students can understand is very appealing, but hard. I've tried it to do it in mathematics a couple times. It sort of works, it sort of doesn't. I did obviously use the rubrics that both for participation and for their essays when I've taught seminar before. I have had zero luck incorporating Moodle into that. It's always been more trouble than it's worth. So I'm mostly here to get ideas as to whether there's more to it than I have seen.
And I'm Carl Thielen, Ed Tech Consultant. I used rubrics in a class I taught in January, and I also used them as a student and thought they were very handy for that, and I'm looking to learn more.
I'm Mark Linwood. I'm in the chemistry department. Excuse me. I'm also new to teaching seminar, so I have no idea what this involves. I'm going to find out as I go, hopefully sooner than that, actually. And I've used rubrics, again, outside of the classroom for grading some writing assignments. I'm not sure if I use them in a manner consistent with people who aren't from science land, right? Like, I just use them in the way that made sense to me. I'm used to science where here's your right answer, right or wrong, right? So it's, less rubric-y. So I'm really interested to see how this goes.
Aaron Sakowitz, Communication Department. I have used rubrics a variety of times in different kinds of contexts, trying to increasingly use them. I'm trying to remember if I used them when I last taught seminar, which was probably 3 or more years ago at this point. I think I'm also, I heard other folks say this, I'm also interested in that integration part, because every time I've tried to do that, it's been really unwieldy. I remember one semester spending a long time figuring out how to get rubrics into Turnitin.com, and it did not save me any time once I was actually using it, and I lost a lot of time setting it up, so it didn't seem, there was no payoff, and I don't think the students found it particularly useful as it was set up in there, so I'm hoping that Moodle, there's a good way we're going to learn how to do it nicely in Moodle for seminar and for my other classes.
Carmel, in an EdTech consultant. I've used rubrics a lot in K-12 settings and found them very useful in that setting. And I've tried them in different learning management systems, and some of them seem to make it really easy, and others, each system kind of has a slightly different way of handling rubrics, so that's kind of an interesting thing to look at. That I'm interested in learning more.
Yeah, so I've had similar experiences between systems like Carmel. Previously, I've used Blackboard, and I know this campus used Blackboard a number of years ago. But really, you see a lot of the same features, just implemented in a slightly different way. So a little bit about rubrics. Again, we seem to have a good baseline of knowledge that it's a scoring tool or a grading tool, or it can also be used as a program assessment tool at the higher levels. And it's really about laying out your degrees of achievement for your students and the particular topics that you're hoping them to achieve within, whether it's a writing assignment, a performance based rubric, or even like we'll show at the beginning, a participation and attendance type of rubric. There are a lot of resources out there, so those are some things we can send out later on, but a lot of professional organizations within like math or science or liberal arts have their own set of rubrics for things that can be made available. Maybe not always the easiest to then translate them into the learning management system, but hopefully we'll show you some ways that they can be used today within Moodle. Any other thoughts?
No, I think we're good to go
Okay.
with the attendance tool.
Yeah, so one thing Moodle has that a lot of people overlook when they're first starting to use it just for uploading files or collecting student work is that there's an attendance tool, and that can also be kind of transitioned into an attendance and participation tool and a simple rubric. So that's added to the course just in your regular course structure. You can add the attendance activity. Once that's added, you have the ability to add sessions that you'll be tracking. So you can think of those as every time you have a class meeting, every time that you're going to be checking on student participation or attendance, you'll create a session for that. And it works like most electronic calendars. So you can create recurring events, a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class that runs, 12 to 1 or 1 to 2:30 like this session. And then once those sessions are created, you're also going to work with a variable or a point value for each of those things. So this is a really simplified rubric because you don't have all the different topics and the levels of achievement. You're really just sort of doing it more on a Likert scale of, in this case, I've just set it to track absences as no points. And then there's a seminar rubric out there that sort of outlines the 4 different levels of participation or types of participation with text-based, focused, questioning, and collaboration. So I kind of broke it down whether, if they hit all 4 of those things, they would get 100 points. And then down to, if they just showed up but didn't participate, they would get a 50% or, sort of an F grade. And then when you go to take attendance or participation, you have each of these sessions and you're able to see your student roster. And again, just apply more of a Likert scale or a point value to how they did in the course. So I've enrolled you all as students, and you can just go down and check through, how many people did what level of participation. These aren't any reflection of anything you've actually done yet, but I just want to show the example here.
I want to appeal my grades.
I know.
Well, that's the great thing is this does track each session, and the student, if you were to log into this class, you can see what you got. And if I look at a report here of that, I'm going to see that for most of you, I've only graded this today's session, but for the student test account, I've gone through and given them a few scores. And so right now, because I said that they missed this session here, they're down at a 63%. And what this translates to is also a column in the grade center that you can then weight with your other grades depending on how much participation is worth. And it's completely up to you within these settings how you want to set up the points possible. So if you want to only offer sort of 10 points per session, you could do it on a 5 to 10 scale or a 0 to 10 scale. And it's just going to do all of the calculations to then have a final participation grade figured out at the end of the course.
Can you go back and show the comment part where you could type in?
Oh yeah, so there's also a comment box when you're taking attendance. And students can see those remarks. So, you can leave, usually this is for sort of brief remarks. Nothing too extensive, but you can leave them short comments there. Great job, Andrew. And then if I save that, again, if you look on your course, you'll be able to go to the attendance tool to that class session and to see what the comments are there. So I was going to show the grade center quickly. So all that translates into just a single grade column. So for attendance and participation, I now see, and you all as students would see an updated participation grade for the course. Any questions about that one? I can walk you through how to set that up a little more if you want, and then we can go on to the next example.
So this one is holistic, right? The next one
Yeah.
we show you, it'll be broken down by different criteria.
Right.
But
So this is a participation rubric that's out there in the seminar Moodle site, and so again, it's sort of distilling this into a more simplified grading scheme where you might apply this first, and then have those participation and attendance scores ready to go, so that you're just using maybe a 4 or 5 point scale, but applying a more in-depth rubric.
But if a student needed encouragement in one particular criteria that reflected just by the Likert scale, that's where you could leave a quick comment for them and say, don't forget about questioning or whatever it might be.
So once the attendance tool is added, you just, first thing you might want to do, like I said, is create the sessions. So you're adding sessions here. Maybe you have a Tuesday, Thursday class. And just watch out, because this one is the 24-hour time clock. So if you have an afternoon class and you want to accurately represent your time, just make sure you put that in. And then you can have a start and a stop date, again, just like most calendar, electronic calendars that you might use. So you could put in the whole semester. And then you can always go through, and if you create a whole bunch and you need to delete a session or two, you can do those individually for a course break or something. And then, like I said, within the settings, you're then able to decide what makes the most sense for you as far as an acronym. I think the default is letter-based, so PLEA, present, late, excused, absent. And they just use sort of a 0, 1, 2, 3 point scale for that. But again, you can change it. And I actually came to this by working with another seminar instructor last year who was looking for ways to, fairly quickly take attendance in the course. But again, use descriptors and acronyms that make the most sense for you and your students. So the numbers just make it really easy for me to visualize how many points, but they could be A, B, C, D, F, or it could be a different alphanumeric scale that you want to use. And again, same thing with the points. And if you need to add another level, you would just put it in here. First, you need to fill it out and then click add, and it will add another level to your participation grade. Right. Yep. So Jessie's now going to show using Moodle assignments and the rubric tools within there.
Apparently the attendance tool is too simple for me because I like to complicate things. So what I did for my students this semester is created fake assignments for participation where they don't upload anything, but it still shows in a grade column in the grade book. And so here is the assignment. I would click grade. And then this is where they did not submit anything, and this is where you would see the rubric. It doesn't give you very much space, so you can zoom out. And so this one's a little bit more in-depth, and I did divide it up according to the different categories, like focused use of text, questioning, etc. And so my students have a copy of this. It's also on the Moodle site, but I just copied the description for each category into the left side. And then made a similar but slightly different scale as well: excellent, good, fair, poor, none. Each criteria has a box that you can type specifically there, or so like excellent, you just click it, and then good, partial, excellent. Yeah, they clicked. Okay. And then once you click save, it should calculate it for you there as well. And then you can leave a comment here if you don't want to do the individual comments for each criteria. You can also click here and leave a comment. You just need to make sure you save in between each of these, otherwise you lose what you just did, which I've definitely done. And so if we wanted to create one of these, we have turn editing on, we'd add an activity or resource, we'd add an assignment, and then you would set, again, the availability, submission types. I would unclick because they don't submit anything for grading. You could have it for a point scale, you could have, or points, you could have it for different types of scales, whether it's letter, satisfactory, checks, etc. And then you would click rubric.
So that's the important bit right there.
Yes, that's the very important bit.
The rubrics are under the grading method of rubric, and then once you save that, you'll be taken to the rubric builder.
So when you save, in order to build the rubric, you have to click on the assignment. Go over to the drop-down menu on the side and click on Advanced Grading. And then you get these options. When you don't have any rubrics yet, you define new. Once you have at least one saved, you'll get the option to copy that one, but we don't have any right now. So again, you would just name it and then this is what it lets you start with. So for here, let's say this is text, that's the criteria, and this will be 0, could be none, 1, could be 4, 2, fair. You can add more levels to the right. You cannot go back and add levels to the left. I made that mistake and had to start all over. And so that would just be for text. For if I wanted to do questioning, then you would again do the same, right? So none, for, fair, good, and excellent. You can order by ascending or descending, and then all of these options are to make sure that you and the student can see different aspects of it. So we'll just do those two for now. We'll save the rubric and make it ready. Publish as a new template.
No, you can make it ready, but that, yeah.
Okay.
So that's under my account. So that's something we're going to work towards is that at least on the admin level, we can create some of these and hopefully sort of create a template gallery
Have them available
that you
for
would then
folks
be able
just
to
grab.
search from.
And this is where we would search. It would come up here.
No, when you did the step before this, she was either able to pick from a template gallery or start a new rubric. I believe it's there, and then there's sort of a search box is probably the easiest way that we're going to be able to make sure people find, the rubrics that are available. She's also experienced an issue where you sort of keep your own library,
Oh my gosh.
and for some reason the same rubric keeps sort of duplicating itself within her library. So
Yeah, so I have 17 of the same rubric each time I copy it or something like that. But
yeah, so we're trying to work through that and see if we can just have a very simple template sort of gallery of rubrics that are available, and that you could also keep your own. within your account.
And it doesn't impede anything, it just looks a little bit messy. And so this is the one we just created right now. And so, right, it just has these categories.
And each of these boxes actually does have quite a bit of area for descriptive text. So you don't have to limit yourself just to the none, poor, fair, good. If you want to expand on some of those with very clear examples, you can add that to those.
Any questions on that aspect?
Pushed a button from the menu on the left that got you into where you were editing the rubric, and I missed the name of it.
Yes, so if we go, you have to be in the assignment, and then menu and advanced grading.
Oh,
And as you create this assignment, you can get there also if you click Save and Display as opposed to Save and Return to Course.
yeah.
You should go right into the Rubric Builder. But if you ever have to go back and adjust the rubric, or if you go back to the course page, you'll go to the advanced grading option.
Question that is kind of a mechanical question, but also kind of a philosophical question that will open up each can of worms. What do you do with students who are absent for excused reasons? So, for example, athletic travel or something like that.
For the example I gave, you might want to build in a specific category for that. I don't know if they have alternate ways that they can participate, but some forums, some instructors I know have used online forums as a way to gauge some of the participation. But if it's all about live participation and attendance, you might have that category for excused absence or something like that.
Is there a way in the gradebook to re-weight things when excused is present?
Within
You
the
can drop grids.
Yeah, you can drop, especially if you've done it the way that she's done it, where you'll end up with an assignment basically for each class and a separate column. Then in the Grade Center, you could drop some of those for those type of situations.
You just don't manually find the folks with excused one absences and drop there.
Yeah, you would have to know and then pick either, basically discount that one assignment or that one day.
Thanks.
I know that a lot of some faculty provide participation grades for every meeting, and some might do it once a week. And so if you do it once a week, for example, with the tool that I did, then I would look at the participation for the week, kind of figure out each grade for each criteria, and then if they're only there one day that week and that's part of their excused absence or one of their allowed 2 or whatever, it's fine. They just get graded on that one day instead of the 2. Yeah.
Yes, you might want to figure out early on, again, if you're doing it this way and you have 3 class meetings a week for 15 weeks, you're going to end up with a lot of
Yes.
grade columns. But if you have some other way of tracking just weekly participation and then you input once a week, it might become simpler. Or like I said, the way I did it, you still have a class session for each meeting, but then in the Grade Center, it's all averaged out into one. But it would be harder to drop those, couple of students or those couple of sessions.
Is there a way to export from Microsoft Word a rubric and import it right away and populate?
Not within the traditional Moodle assignments. There is a template for what we'll show next is the Turnitin Rubrics, and there's a template you can download and then fill out and re-upload. Or there's also some ability to share rubrics by downloading them as files, and so I'll show you that. So that you could share amongst each other, all seminars could have access to the shared writing rubric or something like that.
But in terms of uploading the participation rubric that I use, I copy for each class, and I do that at the beginning of the semester, so I don't have to do it as I go. So it's just all set. I made the rubric once, it took maybe 3 minutes, and then you just copy for the other assignments.
Yeah, so once it's there as part of your library, you can reuse it and even tweak it from there if you need to refine your rubric. So we heard earlier there's also a rubric tool within Turnitin. Turnitin was updated pretty recently along with our Moodle, so I don't know when you last used it or if there's a different experience now, but I'll show that tool and talk about some of my experiences and challenges with it. So first, you're just going to add the Turnitin assignment. Well, so I'll show you the example and then we'll build it after that. So this was an assignment that I set up with a rubric. I can take a look at the rubric here. So what I did was took the seminar writing rubric and just basically translated it into a Turnitin rubric. And so that one's on an A, B, C, D, F scale with thesis, language, grammar, structure. And the good thing, one good way to use rubrics is to share them with your students. So it really gives them a clear sense of what your expectations are for the paper. And I think for seminar, most of them probably already have access to this writing rubric, because if they have gone past seminar 1, they've probably used it or seen it before. So again, there's some pretty common expectations of writing and even participation in the seminar program. So once students have uploaded their papers, you can click on them here, and like Moodle, Turnitin has an online grading system. So you can view the paper, and then you can view the rubric over here on the side, or pop it out like in the other example. So in the smaller view, it's just a series of sliders. Well, I can't look at it, I guess, there. So in this view, it's the same kind of process of just clicking the appropriate boxes for the grade. This one doesn't let you give specific comments to each of those categories like the Moodle traditional assignment did, so that's a little bit of a drawback. You can still leave overall feedback on the paper itself, just not tied to, say why they got a specific grade on grammar. And then if I apply that to the grade, that's going to do basically the same thing as what we saw in Moodle assignments. So just calculate that grade based on you're applying the rubric. Again, this interface just lets you do a little more sliders, but it's a little more difficult to see what you're grading on specifically. It's kind of down here. And then just the other things to know that, not related to rubrics, but like I said, you can leave text comments on a paper within Turnitin. You can do some marking up or have saved comments that you like to make frequently. And then this is all the plagiarism check. So this is something that I've uploaded before, which is why it's giving me a really bad score. So I'll show you how to build the rubrics, and I did have a little bit of a challenge just because of the way the interface works. But I actually also was able to save this file out, so I'll be able to send it to you or put it in the seminar site on Moodle so that you can download it and put it in your own Turnitin assignments. All right, so I'm just going to add the Turnitin activity, and now it's called Turnitin Assignment 2. You won't see Turnitin 1, it's just the upgrade, and I'm still seeing the traditional one. So you create the assignment, and then the basic parameters. Do you want them to upload something? Do you have a due date or a post date? And then under grade, actually you don't do anything, I think, here for the rubrics. You just set up all the parameters for the assignment, and then once you save and display it, you're going to be able to build the rubric. So again, this weird little icon here that kind of looks like a mini rubric is the Rubric Builder. And you can create a new rubric. I haven't really tested out the grading forms, so I think that's a simplified form of a rubric that you can use. You do have your own little library of rubrics here, or you can, from up here, import. So again, I can share that file out that lets you import this writing rubric. So if I did create a new rubric, again, I get the basic layout. This is 3x4, but you can add different criteria or add to the scales on the side. You can both give points and weights here. So I can say that there's 10 points available for this, but on this criteria, it's weighted higher than this criteria here. So that lets you be a little more refined in if you need to weight certain things in a paper, like thesis and backup information rather than spelling and grammar. Say if there's a certain way that you want to weight it. So the challenge that I had is in building the writing rubric for seminar, this web interface, if I click outside of the box there, I've just exited my rubric without saving. I can't get back to it. It basically hasn't saved in place, and so in the process of building the rubrics a few times, I accidentally clicked outside the box there and lost my work.
This is a lot.
Yeah, this was a
to
lot. I was copying and pasting in most cases, which was a little easier than had I typed all this out and then lost it at some point. But again, just something to recognize that a click out here is going to lose my rubric in this case. Once it's saved, it's saved. You can then reuse it or adjust it from there. So it's one of those things you might want to save your work and then get back to it later. I don't know if that's some of the experience that you had or if you just had other challenges in
I think
applying.
just putting all of this stuff in was kind of a lot of work, and then I was frustrated that I couldn't add the comments
Yeah.
that were a little bit more specific
Yeah.
for folks.
I'd say that's the biggest drawback in comparing the traditional assignments to Turnitin. And I know a lot of seminars, there's a requirement to use Turnitin at least once, I think, throughout your course, and many use it for every assignment, every writing assignment. But just, yeah, that ability to give feedback on a specific part of the rubric. If you're using a rubric, I think you're going to want that that availability to be specific on why they didn't, meet a certain standard.
Personally, something that I did when I was creating rubrics for the first time in Turnitin is, again, I didn't add the leftmost column that I needed. I forgot it, and I could not go back and add it in the correct place after, so I had to add it to the far right. So they were not necessarily the place that they needed to be, but they all got there. And then personally, I do not use Turnitin rubrics for the writing grades because I find that the structure development criteria is too broad. It's pretty much almost everything in a paper to me of content, right? It's your evidence, it's your analysis, it's your organization. And I like to give more detailed feedback. So I don't use this for that, but I do use the Turnitin rubrics for more simplified assignments.
Any other questions or comments about Turnitin rubrics? Yeah.
I hope this isn't getting off topic, but I don't use, I'm wondering if people have a sense of whether students actually read. I have this concern that they don't read the responses when they're given electronically, and when they give it on a paper and it's in front of them, that they actually see what I've written. I'm wondering if anyone has any experience with that, if people actually are reading their Turnitin responses.
I have students who are.
Okay.
Can I say that all of them are? The ones that are a little bit more passive, maybe not. But all of my feedback is provided online, so if they want to know how to improve on anything, they have to look.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes they need a little more direction. Just like in building these, a student might not know where that
So demoing it in
feedback
class.
is going to show up.
Yeah.
And we do hear that quite a bit, that students sort of are just looking for that final score, the letter grade or the points possible for the assignment, and they're not really interested in looking deeper to see the comments.
And with the structure of Turnitin, they can see the grade and then they would have to click in to get the rest of the information. Is that correct? Like to get the actual written feedback or
In the rubric.
Yeah, they kind of see a similar view here where they see their own
Can we do the
submission.
student view?
Yeah, we can. I think I have it open here. I don't think I made a lot of comments on this, but so a student basically goes to a page like this when they're looking back at what they've submitted. So they would see the grade. They would see that there was a rubric, if you allowed them to view the rubric ahead of time. And then they'd probably have to click on the name of their assignment here to see if you did any markups within Turnitin. I haven't finished filling out the rubric for this, otherwise I think they would be able to see it and see what was marked on the rubric. But that is a good point. Sometimes students need a little bit of direction if you want them, not much direction needs to be given if you're handing them a copy of the rubric marked off with some comments. it's something we can also work on is some how-to guides for students to get to these places.
I find it helpful at the beginning of the semester and after the first assignment has been returned to have students bring their device to class, and then I set up with the laptop to the TV in class, and we go through it together on how to access each different component of the grade.
So I want to open it up a little more. And do you have any other experiences that you've, trying to use rubrics within Moodle or just within your class? Some folks use Excel or things like that to do the grading or the grade calculations. Are there any success stories or challenges that you want to share?
I unfortunately have to go teach a lab. So
No problem.
it's so bad.
Yeah. Well, so we can I can put the rubrics file for Turnitin probably in the seminar Moodle site with some instructions on how to put that into your course if you're interested. But thank you for coming.
Don't want me like break up the party.
And
Yeah.
then we're here also now with some work time to help folks set up anything that you actually want to play around with.
Does the seminar program, you have a seminar-like template site for faculty to use, right?
Mhm.
And do you know if there are, the rubrics are part of that? And if you import it from there into your seminar course site, do the rubrics import? Do you know that?
No, currently most of them are PDFs or
Word.
Word files that have been put up there by the seminar program or by individual instructors who have shared sort of the rubrics that they've used.